and keeping them to themselves. So, and Hynek knew this. I mean, that's why eventually he just threw his hands up in the air and said, that there is something to this phenomena, and these guys are being disingenuous. Yeah. So, yeah, Hynek made good. Condon didn't. My friend Greg Bishop, he put out the ufology tarot deck last year that has all these classic golden age people from ufology in there. So you've got Whitley, and you got Vallée and Hynek and Strieber and all these great people, but he gave Condon and Carl Sagan the devil card, and they kind of deserved it because they were the ones that lied to the public. So,
well, Sagan, I definitely think Sagan was paid.
He was
by
paid.
the government.
He got JPL. They gave him JPL.
Yeah,
shut up.
Yeah, I think he was paid to downplay. And you know what? I'd be hard pressed to say that people like Neil deGrasse Tyson aren't being the same. Because it's just like it is so over the top. And I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson goes out of his way to like make videos and put them online and degrade the topic. He goes that far. And he consistently mocks the idea that we'd be of any interest to any civilization more advanced. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And first off, didn't you, Neil deGrasse Tyson, get your start with something that was theoretical with black holes? Black holes were theoretical until they were discovered. Then they were reality. So what we're doing is we're in the process of making it reality, making it known. So for a guy like that to be so active against a community like ours, it's like, who's paying you, buddy?
Closed-mindedness. And as the good Dr. Hynek said, ridicule is not part of the scientific method. But all these guys, they wind up leaning into ridicule. That's their final outpost, I guess. And it's unfortunate. And as far as Carl Sagan goes, now I've talked with Kathleen Martin about him, and she said that Stanton Friedman came into the possession of some documentation that showed that Carl Sagan was sort of channeled away from his original ideas. You know that Carl Sagan's very first paper that he published in 1962, his first dissertation, was more or less ancient aliens theory. He said, instead of listening for distant radio signals, you should get archaeologists to do deep digs and look for stuff that doesn't belong, in the strata of geology. And that was Carl Sagan's initial paper, and you could get it online. It was available until it was taken down by his widow a few years back. But that is true. 1962, that was his viewpoint. And apparently, or according to Stanton, they told him point blank, wouldn't it be unfortunate if a young guy like you with such potential, if nothing happened for you? And then they kind of gave him the offer of JPL if he would divert his attention to something other than digging for archaeological evidence that we've been visited. That speaks volumes to me. Also, Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, these were guys that were vocally against UFOs. That was a problem for me growing up. It was confusing because my mom, who worked for officialdom, said it was very real, realer than I would ever know, is how she put it. It's realer than you'll ever know, son. And but then I would read my favorite science fiction writer, Arthur Clarke, the bastion of the stupid. Well, I happen to have read the correspondence between Dr. J. Allen Hynek and and Arthur C. Clarke. Paul Hynek does have the correspondence, the actual paper letters between his father and Clark. And Clark finally said, he told Dr. Hynek, he said, I believe that what you are doing and what the evidence that you are finding is very, very valid. And I think that that science should look at this. But, I can't say that in public because I would never be invited to another moonshot again. And it's there. I mean, I've actually got a copy of that letter that Paul took a screenshot of for me. And
wow.
So I imagine they're still doing that now. I mean, it's this phenomenon.
I mean, why wouldn't they be?
They will have to admit that they can't protect the public from it, and they don't want to do that. And they're going to have to answer for things like James Forrestal falling out of a window, and things like that, and I think that there's bodies buried around this, and it's very. They're going to have to tell everybody that was involved that they'll be forgiven of their sins, I guess.
Yeah.
So I understand.
I've always said that we got to meet the government halfway on this thing, because if we don't, nobody's going to come forward with any information. Because they're not going to incriminate themselves. But what I want to do is, Earl, I want to get because the tonight's show is about abductions, and are they still happening? I want to kind of transition. Maybe we could talk about David Grush a little bit later, after the break. But
sure.
Let's talk about your experience, and let's talk about what happened to you, and then we'll get into some of the more recent cases of abductions that maybe you could talk to us about and enlighten the audience on. From here on, it's your show. I'm going to be here for the ride, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you. He knoweth not what he doeth, but you're given the show.
Thou shalt not.
But yeah, exactly, Gandalf. Well, I don't want to concentrate too much on myself, but I grew up knowing that we weren't alone. I grew up knowing that we weren't alone because my mother worked for Howard Hughes, and she had actually, when I was 5 years old, she told me that she had worked in an underground facility for them, and she said that we were already in touch with extraterrestrial life. That there is an intelligence out there, and we already know about it, and it's real, and I lived with that for many years, and I would try to get her to talk more about it, and she wouldn't. She signed NDAs on all that stuff, but every once in a while she would talk. When she passed away in 1999, I knew I wasn't going to be getting any more information from Mom, and it bothered me because she told me that it's realer than you'll ever know. And I even mentioned to her, I said, this is like one of those deep human important questions. What happens when you die? Is there a God? And is there, are we alone in the universe? And I think that she knew that I cared about that very, very much, that question. And it's probably why she opened her mouth when I was a little kid, because she saw me. My safe place would be surrounding myself with Time Life books, opened up to Jupiter and different planets and the early space program, and playing with my space men, the little plastic. I wanted to play with astronauts, not army men usually, and she knew that. But when she passed away, that was the end of my connection to all that. And so I became a MUFON field investigator, just because I felt like I wanted to know. I thought that it was realer than I knew, and I wanted to know and wanted to see what I could do about it. Now, something strange happens when you really poke at this phenomena. You find out that it's interactive and it pokes back. So about 9.5 years ago, 9 years ago, around there, I did have a face-to-face encounter with entities. Scared the hell out of me. I asked for it. You know, I was trying, like, meditating and sending out that message. I want to meet you. If taking my DNA is the price of the ticket, go for it. You know, you can have my DNA. And long story short, it worked. If you want to hear the details, I think there's a Ancient Aliens episode where I talk about it, and multiple podcasts out there that I talked about it.
What do you mean? Anonymous asks, what do you mean you asked for it? So
I tried
maybe
like
you
a
can go
CE5 meditation thing. Is what
where were you when you did
I
that,
tried.
though?
I meditated. I was in Burbank, California, in our old house, working on UFO reports for MUFON, like nuts and bolts UFO reports.
Oh, wow.
And you know, I what I was hoping for was maybe, you know, maybe Valiant Thor would show up, or, you know, the tall whites, that they would, you know, come on, Earl, we're going to show you the universe, right? Naive, you know, me. But I had just kind of stuck my toe in the pool maybe 6 months before, and I was naive about this, even though I'd read, you know, a Bud Hopkins book at that point. I didn't really think it would work. But careful what you watch for. You know, careful if you stare into the abyss, it might stare back. And that did happen. You know, my wife was involved. I mean, it happened over a week's time. There were 3 different incidents. You know, the first night was me, and they came through the wall, and they took DNA. They took lots of blood, is what they took. Scared the hell out of me. I thought they would exsanguinate me or something, which they didn't do. They left me as they found me. But 2 nights later, my wife is the one who's shaking me, and our room was still flooded with light. And her, you know, what she had to say was, you need to tell your little friends they need to leave us the F alone. I didn't sign up for this. And 2 nights after that, our house was like God's spotlight came down. We woke up again. We both ran to the window. It was coming from outside as well as in our room, this light with no source. And I found out that this phenomena is personal. And I was confused. I was confused because I was very nuts and bolts about this stuff. I tried CE5 on a lark, and I didn't do it like with a little laser pointer and crap. You know, I did like the, you know, meditate and stare at the mandala in the corner, you know, the room, and invite them. But anyhow, at that time, I was working for my state director here in MUFON, thought that maybe abductions or visitations would happen, maybe very, very uncommonly. He felt like, you know, Betty and Barney Hill might have been real, and, you know, some of the, you know, Travis and some of that stuff. And I was kind of encouraged not to talk about it. And I didn't. I mean, I was bumping into ridicule when I did talk about it. So I didn't. I would, if I had a new field investigator, like I was made chief investigator at that point, a little while after, despite having met aliens. Not what my state director wanted to hear at the time. He knows better now. I guess he had his own little encounter, but I would tell my new field investigators, because I felt like they deserved that caveat, like a heads up. If you poke at this thing, just be aware this is what happened to me. Be careful what you ask for, and just know that there's no. It's not like you're looking externally at this phenomenon through a microscope at something on a you know, on a slide. You become part of the experiment when you start looking into it. You're entered into this phenomenon. That's what my experience has been. And I eventually, like maybe a year after this had happened, I sought out Kathleen Marden, and